Okay, listen, just a couple of observations. Why do you think you don't want to believe in an afterlife? Most of the guys just claim, listen, there's no evidence, or they don't see the evidence, but why are people so not wanting that there should be a God? Do you think they're just moving away, that they're scared of the consequence, or they just want to do what they want to do now? I mean, it just makes logical sense to want to see your family and your kids again. Why try to be or fight to be right so that there's nothing at the end of the line?
I've never said that I don't want an afterlife to exist. I've never met anybody that thinks that. I've heard Christopher Hitchens compare heaven to a celestial North Korea, which it's actually a pretty funny take on the whole thing. But I mean, whatever heaven is supposed to be, what we know about it is absolutely nothing at all. So I'm not going to sit here and criticize something that is literally inconceivable, because what am I going to criticize? Like, how old are people when they go to heaven? You say you want to be with your family. Are your children going to be the same age as you? What about people who die when they're only 3 weeks into their fetal development? Do they just float around in heaven as a 3-month-old fetus, or are they 25 years? Like some people say, well, everybody is 30 years old because that's how old Jesus was. Well, many people never become 30 years old. I mean, it's just so it's such a ridiculous thing to talk about and think about. So I don't sit here and go. I don't sit here and be like, I hope it's not real. Like, if hell's real, I wouldn't want to go there. But I don't sit here and I do or think or say anything about, I don't criticize the structure of heaven because it is completely unknowable. So you can't criticize something that you know nothing about.
Yeah, well, obviously there is some claims that the Bible is making of heaven, but obviously if you're not a believer in the Bible, it's quite a difficult thing.
Well, okay, like name one then. The only ones I can think of is the Father is seated next to the Son or whatever at the right hand of the Father, and there are some actual really weird, specific things that talk about how bright it is in heaven. But beyond that, it's like, well, there's literally no information about it.
Well, okay, I don't want to jump into that rabbit hole, but I think the point is it's better than nothing. So, but maybe the next question that I have for you is, people sort of claim that and in your list above it says evolution is true, but evolution is faith. If you go like,
only in the sense,
evidence.
Yeah, it's not faith; it's empirical. So the only sense in which it is faith-based is if I look at these pair of sunglasses, can I actually trust that what my brain is showing me as an image actually is what this is? That's the only sense where belief comes in. Now, you have to believe to that extent when it comes to literally every single thing. But evolution, it follows empirical science.
I'm talking more on a pragmatic basis. I'm not talking like the philosophy of science or anything. Like you never know, like something is real, or there's no choice, or there's no free will, and whatever. The point is, what evolution basically is saying. I'm not even talking about the Homo erectus or this or that, any of those periods. I'm talking about basically someone saying that there was like you were in the ocean. It was like one piece, like a fish. That fish suddenly had like an eye that happened by itself. That sort of took a breath, and then the lung developed after that, which doesn't make sense at all.
Of course, it doesn't make sense. That's not what that's not how evolutionary biologists imagine that this occurs. It occurs extremely gradual over the scale of populations.
But that's the faith. It's millions of years. Because you're claiming that like a fish took a breath, or it walked out of the water.
Yes, you're saying it in ways which are not the way it is actually conceived of. and then you're like using that to dismiss it, but it's like...
So how is it... No, but how is it conceived, like practically? Like, I just want to understand how someone can believe, because it's still, that's what I'm saying, you've still got to believe it, because there's no evidence, like people say there's evidence of evolution. Where's the evidence that like we were fish and we walked out of the oceans and
the fossil record is replete with hundreds of thousands of transitional fossils?
No, that's just, that's like, that's still debatable. Is it apes that was
it's not debatable.
Turned into humans? Well, it is debatable, because you can still see it's like one species. You can't really see the migration of one species into another. But the point is, do you still believe that you were a fish, that we started as a fish, and that my great-grandfather was like a lizard, like that walked out of the ocean, and that actually turned over millions of years, turned into something that eventually crawled up a tree and then eventually started walking? I mean, it just makes logical sense. I mean, if you have a baby today, I mean, that baby is so dependent, and the whole evolution theory of the pelvic got smaller, they had to get then the babies became like sort of dependent on the fathers to survive, or the father and the mothers, but it's just, the whole thing doesn't make sense. That's what I'm saying. It's 100%.
It makes extremely good sense if you actually read the literature and all that. I'm almost certain you've never read one book about evolution, because you're explaining it in extremely stupid ways. I could do the exact same thing to you. I could criticize your religion in this way. So you think that a magical sky Santa Claus just sort of hawked a loogie into the dirt, and then that's where Adam formed? I mean, come on, that's stupid.
Well, that's the same. That's what I'm saying. I think that's the point. I think both of them is faith. I mean,
no. Your explanation requires miracles, and mine does not. So mine is far more rational and empirically based than yours.
Is it rational for a fish that walked out of the sea over millions of years? That fish walked out of the sea. Like, listen, what we are saying. You're saying a fish walked out of the sea, became a lizard. That lizard crawled up a tree.
Again, you're intentionally being an idiot. You're weaving a story that is idiotic, and no evolutionary biologist would say that is accurate. We are talking about extremely gradual changes over millions of years. We know for a fact that around like 10,000 years ago, there were zero domestic dog breeds, whereas today there are hundreds, and they have gradually been reproduced. The transformation from a wolf to a pug is really extraordinary. And I could just sit here and say, no, pugs, God created pugs. You can't go from a wolf to a pug. Come on, don't be stupid. But we know for a fact that gradually you can.
But the Bible explains it.
The Bible has zero scientific explanatory powers. And when I say zero, I mean zero. And when I say zero, I mean zero. Name one scientific truth in the Bible. You only have to name one.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think both are just faith claims. And
okay, you can't
explain it in a. It's like the Big Bang. You claiming that something, like if you go to Science America today, what does it say?
This says the Big Bang happened. This does not say how it happened. This does not say anything about that. It says it happened.
But still, it says something exploded out of nothing.
Maybe it didn't explode out of nothing. Nobody knows. I don't have the answer to that question. You don't have the answer to that question. Nobody does.
I agree. Yes, but that's what I'm saying. I think both is a faith claim. But
it's not a faith claim to say that the Big Bang happened. We know it happened. It's been observed to happen. We know that the universe is expanding, which means a long time ago the universe was in a more dense state. The collapse, the reverse expansion, goes all the way until a singularity. That was first worked out by a Roman Catholic priest from, I don't know if he was Roman Catholic, but he was a priest from Belgium. His name was Georges Lemaitre, and it's incontrovertible that the Big Bang occurred. Nobody in the scientific community is saying what caused the Big Bang. It's just that it occurred, and we know we can explain very well the evolution of the universe over these 13.77 billion years.
You know, that again, I mean, just hear what you're saying. You're saying 13.77 billion years. Why not 10 billion years? Why not 5
Because
billion
it's been
years?
measured.
How do you measure that? Explain. You know what's the funny thing?
You are totally... Okay, here's what you're doing. You don't know. You're completely ignorant about this, so then you just say that it's impossible and nobody knows. Physicists have measured this. Georges Lemaitre's calculated it. Edwin Hubble calculated it. Hundreds upon hundreds of people have calculated this because it's knowable based on the expansion rate of the universe today. And then guess what? In science, what we do is we take our observations and then we use that data to make predictions. And then lo and behold, in the 70s or 80s, whatever it was, at Bell Laboratories in New Jersey, they discovered the cosmic microwave background radiation, which perfectly matched the predictions, the mathematical predictions and the cosmological predictions about the Big Bang model. So it's been observed, it's been calculated and observed and measured, and it was perfectly matched to exactly what we said it would be.
So there's now exactly this point that you're making. There's carbon dating. Carbon dating today is seen as fact. There's a guy in the US, sort of people laughed him off, but his name's Kent Hovind. So,
Kent Hovind is a charlatan and a fraud and a criminal who went to jail for many years, and he's a psychopath. He has narcissistic personality disorders. His entire immediate family has abandoned him because they cannot stand him. It's just him and his brainwashed son who go around doing this nonsense. They are not scientists. They don't have degrees in science. They don't know science. They are scientifically illiterate, and they lie to people.
Yeah.
Kent Hovind is a charlatan and a fraud and a moron. And if you believe him over anything, then you have fallen for it. So we're not talking about Kent Hovind, just like we're not going to talk about whether or not the Earth is flat.
I wasn't going to talk about him. I was going to talk about what he studied. So he did actually do one study. Go check it out. They sent bone fragments to 10 of the U.S. universities, including Berkeley, including all those guys, and said that they need to date these bones, and a $250,000 wager was set on this test that was done. And you know what? He sent that was quite funny because it was independently audited. There was a dog bone wasn't older than 15 years, and the shortest time period that was dated on that actual dog bone was like 250,000 years by all of the universities. And
that's not possible because radiocarbon dating doesn't give us dates beyond around 65,000 years.
Oh, well, just go check it out. Check out the study. So the point is, how did any of them find greater than 15 years? That's the point. And that's what I'm saying. It's all pseudoscience. What you're selling is pseudoscience. Evolution is just pseudoscience.
Oh my God, dude. You are so scientifically illiterate, and then you say we're the pseudoscientists. Physicists have measured the expansion rate of the universe extremely precisely, and then they made mathematical predictions and models based off of that, and guess what? Every single thing that they predicted about the structure and age of the universe came completely true. That's not pseudoscience. When your models perfectly predict what happens, it's not pseudoscience. It means that your model works.
Oh, well, I guess everybody can probably believe what you want to believe, but I surely don't believe that my grandfather was a fish.
Neither do I.
But anyways, well, you do, because you believe in evolution.
I think your grandfather was a human being.
Well,
and I think millions of years ago there were no human beings, because we know that for a fact because of the fossil record.
What the fossil records of a couple of eight, it's like 8 different ape skulls, and that you claim that you think it might have been this might have been a human or an older human that turned into that. That's just subjective. It's no proof.
So
there's so much.
Okay. Get ready, everybody. This guy was transplanted here by space and time traveling aliens. All of his baby pictures, those aren't proof of anything. Those could easily be anybody. They could easily be anybody. My idea is exactly as rational as the idea that he was born from 2 human beings. Except, wait, it's not, because there's no evidence for it, and there's no equivalency between those two things. Congratulations.
Yeah, but you claiming evidence that there's like one species turning into another, but there's no evidence of
yes,
that.
Actually there is. Because if species did do that, if species did change over time, then that would mean there are these intermediate forms. And if these intermediate forms existed in the past, then their remains would be fossilized. And guess what? They are fossilized. We have hundreds of thousands of these things that we can look at, like Archaeopteryx, like Tiktaalik, like a gazillion others. You have started with a conclusion, and then it corrupts the way that you look at the evidence.
Anyways, listen. No, I think that's fine for me. I think the point for me is just Richard Dawkins in his book he writes the God Delusion. You've read it probably.
I've read like 5 of his books. I haven't read that one.
Yeah. Well, the God Delusion basically he's doing this, and this is sort of what you guys are doing.
Yes, he's shooting down conspiratorial and supernatural explanations in favor of empirical explanations that are actually based on evidence.
So what he does, what he does is he says, listen, if you and I walk onto the University of Oxford today, and there's a rose garden, and I can see the white flowers, the yellow flowers, and
I've had enough of that. That was idiotic.